Happy New Year to all of you. And today I'm going to talk about calcium as well as vitamin D. So these two, as you already know, are very important minerals which are required for our body. Calcium is a mineral and vitamin D being a fat-soluble vitamin. And as you can see from the slide, so we have different sources of calcium as well as vitamin D, but more or less their sources are same. So from plants, where plant-based, you have tofu, different beans, the bok choy, kale, broccoli, certain seeds like chia seeds and sesame. And animal-based, of course, you have high fatty fish, egg yolks, fish like salmon, cod, then mackerel, sardines. Similarly, for vitamin D, it is also called as the sunshine vitamin. So our body already has a prohormone in the form of prohormone in the body. And when the sunlight falls on our skin, it helps in the production of vitamin D. Nowadays, we get a lot of fortified products also in the supermarkets, whether it's grains, cereals, orange juice, they all have added vitamin D. The fatty fish are also a good source of vitamin D. What is their importance? So these two are very much important. Number one, calcium. First of all, it is required for our healthy bones and teeth, for the blood clotting to take place when we get injured, for the conduction of muscle as well as nerve actions, contraction of muscles, as well as in certain absorption spectrum in our digestive system, like absorption of vitamin B12, insulin, as well as helps in the breakdown of the fatty food. Similarly, vitamin D, it is required for maintaining the calcium as well as phosphorus in our body. So this calcium ultimately helps in the bone formation, and it also strengthens, the vitamin D also strengthens our immune system. About 80 to 90% of the population in the world nowadays, they say, is vitamin D deficient. So what can happen if we are deficient with calcium as well as vitamin D? First of all, with vitamin D deficiency, it's sometimes commonly observed in children is a disease called rickets, wherein the bones become soft, there is delayed growth, as well as their walking becomes difficult, they have bow-shaped legs. Then osteoporosis, as we all know, is a clinically encountered problem nowadays, commonly seen amongst elderly men as well as women. Deficiency of vitamin D weakens our immune system. As a result, it prones us to more attacks of asthma, colds, frequent infections, and sometimes it also leads to triggers of the diabetes. I will talk in general about osteoporosis, which we have commonly encountered, which the clinicians commonly see it nowadays. So there are various reasons. Osteoporosis basically means our bones become weak because there is calcium which is depleting from our bones. When there is the calcium from the bones becomes less, so the bones become brittle and weak, and suppose we injure ourselves or fall, our chances of the bones getting fractured increases. There are various reasons why they say osteoporosis is occurring. Number one is the deficiency of calcium, whether it could be diet related, or sometimes we have a problem in our absorption of the calcium. Number two is lack of physical exercise. We adopt a sedentary lifestyle, try to stay at home most of the time, lack of sunshine, stepping out outdoors is less. As a result, it can lead to weakening of our bones. The strengthening of the muscles is also not there. Some kind of medicines commonly said is the anti-diabetic drugs, as well as the medicines which are used for prostate cancer. They also lead to weakening of the bones. And in postmenopausal women, because of the estrogen starts getting depleted, as a result, the estrogen also helps in the regulation of vitamin D in our body. So when estrogen is less, the synthesis of vitamin D and its absorption by the body decreases. So our bones gradually become weak. So what can we do to improve? But first of all, as I told you earlier, that these two minerals, calcium as well as vitamin D, are interlinked. And calcium being a tough mineral to digest, so is vitamin D, which is a fat-soluble vitamin. So what happens if there is excess? Number one is, can we have toxicity through diet? I don't think so, because in my next slide, there's a list of common foods which have vitamin D as well as calcium. So you need to eat lots of those to get that kind of toxicity. Could be excessive supplementation. People say that, my bones are paining and everything, it's becoming weak. So without getting the investigations, sometimes you start consuming them. Excessive supplementation can lead to toxicity. So what happens with that is there is deposition of calcium, which is hypercalcemia. So there is excessive deposition of calcium around our bones, around the kidneys and certain cells. And this hypotoxicity also decreases the absorption of certain minerals, which we get from other food, like iron, zinc, magnesium. When there is hypertoxicity happens, there is also a lot of muscle spasm, which is not under our control. So people keep up complaining of a lot of muscle cramps. According to the guidelines from various dietary associations, whether US or UK, the range they recommend for calcium for adults is 1000 milligrams per day. For elderlies is about 1200 milligrams per day. For children, it is 800 milligrams per day. Whereas for pregnant and nursing women, it is 1300 milligrams per day. Vitamin dosage also for children, they say, is about 400 to 800 international units. And for adults, it is 1000 to 4000 international units. The upper limit recommended by the Endocrinological Society, they say, is it should not exceed 4000 international units, which is about 100 micrograms. So you should not consume more than 100 micrograms of vitamin D per day. So here is a common list of the sources of calcium as well as vitamin D and the amount which each of these sources contain. So you can see there's yogurt and milk, they contain high amount of calcium. The salmon, sardines, fish, it's 3 ounces, so roughly about, more than 28 grams, which you need to consume to get enough amount of calcium as well as vitamin D. Certain green beans and here eggs are good sources of vitamin D. Plant-based, good amount of mushrooms. So my suggestions is, number one, expose the body to sunlight. Generally recommended is that people should step out more outdoors. Ideal sunlight is the ultraviolet B, and they say that the good timing to expose the body to sunlight is from 9 in the morning to 4 p.m., 3 to 4 times per week for about 15 to 20 minutes. And in that, try and have your neck, arms, legs exposed along with the back. So for back, probably you need to lie down at the beach or somewhere where you get good sunlight. We also have commercial tanning beds available, but just a word of caution, we do have these in Hong Kong. You need only ultraviolet B radiation, but very rarely. My suggestion would be not to go ahead with these tanning beds because number one, you don't know whether those machines emit the ultraviolet B radiation. And secondly, it can lead to increased tendency for developing skin cancer. The other important thing which we have to keep in mind is that dark-skinned people, as well as elderly, as well as in the timings like summer months or winter. In summers, a short duration of sitting outside and exposing ourselves to sunlight is a better option, whereas in winters, you need to do it for a longer period of time. We try and sit in front of the glass where sunlight is coming. They say that the ultraviolet radiation does not penetrate the glass. So we actually need to step outdoors to get good amount of sunlight. We need to be physically active, engage in muscle strengthening exercises, and try to retain the muscle mass, especially in elderly, when their bones start becoming, gradually they start losing muscle mass also. So they need to strengthen their bones. Eat a calcium as well as vitamin D enriched diets. And always recommended is the investigations like a blood test to rule out whether you have any calcium or vitamin D deficiency. Avoid unnecessary supplementations. So I hope this was a good short lecture on how we can increase our intake of vitamin D and what we should do to for helping an increased synthesis of vitamin D. Thank you.